On October 2nd, 1999, 3-year-old Jaryd Atadero went on a hike up the Big South Trail in Podure Canyon, Colorado, with a group of adults and his 6-year-old sister. The 3-year-old child never returned. The case was eventually ruled eaten by mountain lion, though there was never any real evidence to suggest this. There were so many peculiar things that surrounded this case that David Pauladies, author of Missing 411, dedicated a huge section of his book to this case. As well, Jaryd's father, Allyn Atadero, wrote a book about the happenings that occurred. Let's discuss this peculiar disappearance along with the peculiar events that followed. Welcome to Peculiar Occurrences. I am your host, Lilith Nova. At the time of disappearance, Allyn Atadero owned the Podure River Resort, and he was a teacher in Littleton. He had a strong Christian background, and he had actually placed up a cross on the property so that weary travelers in distress would know that this was a safe place for them to go to. He also offered free services to hikers in distress. One day, Allyn was getting ready for the winter seasons, preparing his resort, along with a couple of volunteers and friends that he had given free cabins to. These volunteers were a group of regulars from a Christian dating network group. On this day, they wanted to go down the street to a fish hatchery. Allyn's 6-year-old daughter, Josie, came up and asked if she could go, and he decided that yes, she could go with them. Soon after, 3-year-old Jaryd came up to him, not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times, asking if he could go too. His father at first deemed that he was far too young to go with these people to the fish hatchery. But then someone came over to him and said, well, you know, if it's okay with you, it's fine with us if he accompanies us. So Allyn wearily said yes and allowed Jaryd to go. The children were put into a car and driven to the fish hatchery. They were just supposed to stay around there and look at the trout. But for some reason, the group decided to hike 20 miles west to a lake further in. No one went back to ask Allyn's permission, and later on, Allyn said he would have never allowed his children to go on this hike. While on the trail, the group had split up into 2 separate groups, one ahead on the trail and one laid further back. The children had been running back and forth between the 2 groups. At some point, Jaryd was seen running up to the group ahead. It was thought that perhaps he tried to run around through the woods and jump out and scare them from in front, but never made it. This was the last time Jaryd had ever been seen. Back at the lodge, Allyn had laid down to take a nap, when soon after people from the group came in and told him, it's about Jaryd. He's alright, we just can't find him. Then proceeded to tell him that they had went about 20 miles on the Big South Trail and lost him on the Big South Trail. Allyn immediately jumped in his car and drove for about 30 minutes up to the trail, while an employee stayed behind and called for search and rescue. When Allyn arrived, he was met by another man who had stayed behind, who had been on the original hike. The man led him up the trail. They ran up the trail, yelling the boy's name. Allyn was yelling every name he had ever called his son. With no luck, Allyn headed back to the parking lot to call back up to the resort and tell them that he had not found his son. By the time he had made it there, a deputy that he actually knew quite well from talks over coffee was waiting in the parking lot for him. The officer told him not to worry, that search and rescue was on its way, and that they would find Jaryd. Search and rescue arrived within 30 minutes, flying from Fort Collin. Upon arrival, they told Allyn that if he is up there, we will find them. A 5-day search for Jaryd ensued by Lamar County Sheriff's Office, but was thrown off due to a search and rescue helicopter crash on October 5th, and then snow that rode in shortly after. 3 days later, Allyn and his twin brother were driving down the road when they heard a report on the radio that Jaryd had actually been spotted by 2 fishermen. That Jaryd had walked up to the fishermen, splashed a stick around in the water, and asked, "Are there bears around here?" The men answered, "Yes, this is bear country," and then asked him to quit banging the stick around in the water because he would scare the fish. Jaryd complied and then ran off. And yes, many people do find it very strange. They let a boy in the woods alone just run off. Very peculiar. What is also peculiar is the fact that the family had to hear about this from the radio. This was never reported to them by police. Searchers had also found a set of prints that they thought at first was Jaryd's near prints of a mountain lion. They later figured out that these were simply prints of a baby bear that was interwoven as it walked up the hill. After Jaryd disappeared, Allyn's twin brother Allyn came up from California, and his mother and rest of his family rallied around him in support. The family wished to go up to the spot where Jaryd had disappeared, a reasonable request, with the group of hikers being the last ones to have seen the boy alive. They were threatened with arrest by the police if they stepped even 1 foot on the trail, which was completely ridiculous since Allyn was back at the resort and his brother was somewhere else in California, and other families were not in the area when this happened. Plus, the family was being told that they didn't believe the child was abducted. So none of these people were even considered suspects, yet they were being stopped from trying to find Allyn's son. The family never understood this response. As well, David Pauladies is quoted saying that he's never heard of a search and rescue or a sheriff's team making a statement like this. End quote. During the point where the canines were working the scene, Allyn was at the head of the trail at the search and rescue headquarters when a couple of search and rescue guys came in with dogs and needed a scent for them to follow. They asked Allyn to hand them a bag, but when he grabbed the bag, he realized what was in it was far too large to be his son's. So he looked in the bag and realized that this was a pair of his shorts, not his son's, and that the search and rescue team did not have his son's scent at all. When he confronted the team and asked them how they could possibly mistake a pair of his shorts for a 3-year-old boy's shorts, the search and rescue worker got up in his face and told him,
"Well, we can call this search off right now."
This statement infuriated Allyn, as it would any parent. He was simply trying to make sure that the search and rescue team had the right scent. How peculiar is that? First they want to keep Allyn's family off the trail, threaten them with arrest, and now they don't even have the right scent. Something doesn't seem quite right here to Allyn. Around this time, Allyn also had a discussion with search and rescue about the possibility of an abduction happening. He was assured that there is only one way in and one way out of this canyon. Few Google searches told him that this is just not true. There are many ways in and out of this canyon, and he was lied to. Something else peculiar is there were a lot of top-notch search and rescue people with top-notch search and rescue dogs and horses and such that called and traveled thousands of miles to help in the search and rescue of this boy. Each and every one of them was turned away by the sheriff's department. That is, until a man named Don Vandal called. He called Allyn and said,
Hey man, I'm one of the best search and rescue people in the country. I have some of the best sniffer dogs in the country, and I have horses that are pretty good at finding missing people too. I want to come up there and I want to help you.
Well, every time Allyn had presented someone like this to the sheriff, he was shot down. So this time, he didn't even talk to the sheriff. He just said, come on up, man, come on up, and told him, what kind of trouble he's been having. Well, next day rolls around, and Allyn and Dawn show up at the site, unexpectedly, to the sheriff. At first, the sheriff fights Dawn, not fight, but argues with Dawn, and tells him he cannot go on that trail. Well, Dawn made sure the media had arrived. He pulled this officer to the side and said,
Look here, sir. We are either here for the same reason, which is to find this boy, or we're not. You're either going to let me up on that trail, or I'm going to walk right over there to those lovely people, tell them who I am, what I can do, what I have with me, and that you won't let me on that trail.
The officer changed his tune real quick, handed Don a walkie-talkie, told him to go ahead and hit the trail and to keep in contact with his main search group. But the peculiar part is Don literally had to threaten him to be allowed up on that trail. And if he was following protocol, him threatening that officer with the media wouldn't have stopped the officer or changed his mind whatsoever. Later, dozens of rescue groups actually ended up reporting to Allyn that they too had been turned away. At another point early in the investigation, Allyn was engaged by one of the sheriffs. He was told that his son was in the water, it was very cold, and it would take at least 4 years for them to find him. What made the sheriff think that was a good idea? I will never know. And where did he get the number of 4 years? That'll come into play later on. At another point, Allyn was at the search and rescue headquarters when he ended up running into a search and rescue member who didn't realize he was the father. But as soon as he realized he was the father, he pulls out a map and he goes, look here, man, I have tracked your son to this spot. And he points out an X on the map. He goes, I know he's somewhere around here. I just can't find him. And no one will listen to me about this. Could you please take this map and talk to the sheriff and have them search there? Well, by then, everything that Allyn had suggested to the sheriff had just been blown off, and he's been basically treated like a criminal this entire time. But Jaryd's mother was there and got excited about the prospect of him being there. So she called up the sheriff and tried to get them to go and check there, and the sheriff refused, telling her that they didn't have the time nor the resources to check that particular spot. And then 4 years later, as the officer had predicted, in the very spot that police refused to check, the first clues to this boy's disappearance were found. Partial remains were found on June 14th, 2003. The remains were part of a skull cap, a tooth, a t-shirt, sweatpants, and shoes. Both the remains and the clothing were found on a cliff above the trail that was very hard to traverse. Even the investigators had trouble getting up there. Jaryd went missing on a trail that was marked moderate to strenuous. There's a net gain of over 1,000 to 9,553 feet, and the trail is 6.5 miles in one direction. This is not a trail for unprepared or inexperienced hikers. After the remains were found, police made a statement that they believe the boy was attacked by a mountain lion. The thing is, Allyn showed the clothes to some private experts who said that there was absolutely no way this child was attacked by a mountain lion. The shirt was, yes, it was very tattered, but it wasn't ripped. And mountain lions always go for the stomach to eat the intestines. And if he had been eaten by a mountain lion, Well, it don't just take the shirt off, it would rip it off. And there were no rips. As well, the pants, they were tattered and torn and missing a leg. But the deputies themselves told him that the reason why it was like that is because of nesting animals. They had come out, took the pieces of sweat, and was taking it off to build their nest. And you could actually see little blue fibers all over the area where these pants were found. Another strange thing about the pants is Allyn was actually on the scene when they were found. And they were found inside out, but police presented them to the public right side in. And when Allyn objected to this, he was asked, how did you know they were inside out? And had to remind the officer that he was on the scene when these pair of pants were found, looking at where other clothing of his son and the skull cap were found. Also, the shoes. After 4 years in the forest, they were absolutely brand new looking shoes, like someone had bought them from the store and placed them on a rock. There was absolutely no scratches on them, and if he had been dragged up a mountain by a mountain lion, if it had been on his stomach, there would have been scratches all over the front of his shoes. And if he had been dragged on his back up the mountain, there would be scratches all over the back of his shoes. As well, Allyn had the tooth examined. He was told that the DNA came back inconclusive. Well, he gave the paperwork off to some other DNA analyst and was told that actually it wasn't inconclusive, it was contaminated. And someone had not properly cleansed the tooth before analyzing it, which is a big no-no and something basic that all DNA analysts know to do. So it was very peculiar that this happened. And he could not get the tooth retested because it was destroyed during the first testing. He also had the skull tested 3 times to make sure that was actually his son. He got about an 86% positive the first 2 times. So then he went to the DNA analyst over the Kobe Bryant case and got him to take his son's case. That analyst came back with 100% positive that this was indeed his son. There were also strange hairs taken off of the collar of the child's shirt, and he never got that report back. To this day, he has not ever seen that report, and he was told that the hairs were not human and not important. How are they not important when you're trying to determine whether or not a child was attacked in a forest? Still to this day, he has not gotten that report. Another peculiar occurrence in this case is Ranger Craig Weston, who reported spotting a boy who matched Jaryd's description in Mesa Verde National Park. He was there with a man, and the boy kept holding the ranger's hand, which the ranger found quite strange. Mesa Valley is in southwest Colorado, an 8-hour drive away from the last place Jaryd had been seen. Nothing came of this lead or witness descriptions. Police didn't even follow it up. Allyn had asked for the FBI to put out a Amber Alert and to become involved in this case. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove there was an abduction and refused to become involved in this case. Was this a case of mistaken identity, or did this ranger really see Jaryd? And now that Allyn's daughter Jossie has grown up, she actually went and got a degree in criminology to help her figure out and understand and make sense of all of this, and also to help people in similar circumstances. And once she became a criminologist, she actually found that there was a lot of pictures and a lot of files from the case that the family could request that they were never even told about. Allyn did end up requesting these things and got them all sent to him via mail on a CD. And although officials have officially closed this case and deemed it death by mountain lion, Allyn sticks hard to the fact that this was an abduction case with foul play that led to the death of his son. But I don't know, what do you think about this peculiar occurrence? What do you think happened to Jaryd? Let me know down in the comments below. As well, while you're down there, make sure to hit up my description box for your peculiar occurrence merch. Also, if you want to hang out with me in between, follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and share this out to all of your peculiar pals. As well, give me a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell where it's like you didn't even subscribe at all, and YouTube won't even tell you when I upload. So hit it. Hit it. Come on, just hit it. You know you want to. And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for all things peculiar. Do 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 do.
Are you listening? Damn.